The day I discovered my sister had emptied our grandmother's house was the same day a sandstorm kept our unit grounded in Kandahar. I stood in the barracks, phone pressed to my ear, as Captain Reeves mouthed, "Everything okay?" from across the room. It wasn't. 6,000 miles away, my childhood home, the one my grandmother had promised would wait for me, was being dismantled piece by the one person who should have protected it. "She's selling Nana's silver tea set tomorrow," my neighbor Mrs. Abernathy whispered into the phone. "Rebecca's had an estate sale running all weekend." "I'm so sorry, Olivia." My fingers tightened around the phone. The tea set, the one Nana poured from every Sunday after church, teaching me the proper way to serve guests, the way her mother had taught her. The one she promised would be mine someday. Has she sold the desk? My voice sounded hollow, even to me. The roll top? It was gone by Friday afternoon. Lovely couple from Savannah took it. I closed my eyes, willing away the burning sensation. That desk held every important family document for 3 generations. It held more than paper, it held secrets, including one that would have stopped my sister in her tracks. "Thank you for calling, Mrs. Abernathy. I need to go now." The line went dead before she could respond. I couldn't blame her for being the messenger, but I couldn't bear another word about what Rebecca was destroying. Not when I was stuck in this desert, unable to stop her. "Family trouble?" Captain Reeves asked, her eyes knowing. After 18 months leading our unit, she could read us all like books. "My sister's selling off our grandmother's estate, the one I'm supposed to inherit when I get back." She winced. Deployment brings out the vultures sometimes, even the ones with the same blood. She handed me a bottle of water, a peace offering in a place where nothing felt peaceful. "How long has your grandmother been gone?" 3 months. I took a swig of water, remembering the video call where I'd seen Nana for the last time, her face thin, but her smile still bright beneath the oxygen tubes. She'd made me promise to come home safe, to take care of the house where 3 generations of Mitchell women had lived and loved. I'd sworn I would, but I hadn't anticipated Rebecca moving so quickly. How could I tell Captain Reeves the whole truth? That the desk Rebecca had sold contained Nana's actual will, the one naming the executor, the one superseding the older document my sister had presented to the probate court, the one Nana had updated after Rebecca's husband Tyler had convinced her to invest her savings in his latest business scheme, money that disappeared like morning dew in July. "When's the next leave you can take?" she asked, her tone shifting to the practical problem solver I'd come to rely on. "Not for another 2 months." She nodded slowly. "That's a long time when someone's dismantling your legacy. Let me see what I can do." But we both knew the reality. The military didn't grant emergency leave for property disputes, even ones that cut to the bone like this. I was trapped here while Rebecca stripped away everything Nana had built. I spent that night writing emails to the family lawyer who hadn't returned my last 3 messages, to the probate court that had accepted Rebecca's outdated will without question, to Rebecca herself. My sister's reply came at dawn, just as the sandstorm was finally relenting. "I'm doing what Nana wanted," she wrote. "The will clearly states I'm executor. The house needs to be sold. Too many expenses. Too many memories. You'll get your share when you're back on American soil. Focus on staying alive, Liv. Leave the hard decisions to those of us who stayed behind. Those of us who stayed behind." The words twisted in my stomach like barbed wire, as if my service was abandonment, as if standing watch while everyone at home slept peacefully was some kind of betrayal. I didn't reply. Instead, I pulled up the one photo I had of the will, just the signature page I'd snapped quickly before deployment when Nana had shown me the document. Not enough to prove anything in court, but enough to remind me I wasn't crazy. The date was clear, 3 months before she died, well after the version Rebecca was using. That morning, our unit moved out as planned. For the next 17 days, I had no access to communications as we secured a remote outpost. 17 days of wondering what else was disappearing, what other pieces of my history Rebecca was converting to cash. 17 days of rehearsing confrontations that might never happen. When we regained contact, there were 3 voicemails waiting, all from Mrs. Abernathy, each one more urgent than the last. Olivia, dear, they've started packing the library books. The real estate agent came yesterday. They're listing the house next week. And finally, I found something in my garage. When your grandmother was ill last year, she asked me to keep a box for you. Said you'd know what to do with it when the time came. I'd forgotten all about it until I saw them carrying out her reading chair. I called immediately, not caring that it was 3 a.m. in Georgia. Mrs. Abernathy, what's in the box? Documents, mostly. Some photos, a letter addressed to you, and a small notebook that looks like a diary. Should I open it? No, I said, perhaps too quickly. Please don't. But could you? I hesitated, knowing what I was about to ask went far beyond neighborly kindness. Could you make a copy of everything and send it to Captain Laura Reeves? I'll text you her information. Mrs. Abernathy didn't hesitate. Of course, dear. Your grandmother was good to me for 30 years. Least I can do is return the favor. I couldn't sleep that night, wondering what Nana had saved, what fail-safe she might have built into her plans. Nana hadn't trusted easily, not after Grandpa left her with 2 small children and a mortgage in 1976. She'd raised my mother alone, put herself through night school to become an accountant, and build a life that no one could take from her. Always have a backup plan, Olivia, she told me once, showing me the false bottom in her jewelry box where she kept emergency cash. Men leave. Banks fail. Family disappoints. But preparation never does. Had she prepared for this? For Rebecca's betrayal? For my absence when it mattered most? 3 days later, Captain Reeves called me into her office. A manila envelope sat on her desk, international postage and military routing numbers scrawled across its face. This arrived for you, she said, sliding it across the desk. Seems important. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside were photocopies of documents, neatly organized with paper clips. On top was a letter in Nana's precise handwriting. The paper was blue, her signature stationery, the one she used for important correspondence. My dearest Olivia, it began, if you're reading this, then things haven't gone according to plan. I read it twice, then a third time, the words burning into my memory. Then I looked up at Captain Reeves, who had tactfully busied herself with paperwork. My grandmother left a duplicate will with her neighbor, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. And evidence that my sister's husband stole $40,000 from her. She knew they might try something like this. Captain Reeves set down her pen. Smart woman, your grandmother. She was. I touched the letter gently. She also left instructions about who to contact if Rebecca tried to sell the house. Her real attorney, not the family friend who's been ignoring me. So what's your next move, specialist? I need to make some calls, and I might need that emergency leave after all. She nodded. I'll back your request. Family, legacy matters. She hesitated, then added, but think carefully about how you want to handle this. Family wounds cut deepest, and they're the slowest to heal. I thought about Rebecca, my big sister who'd taught me to ride a bike, who'd held my hand at her mother's funeral, who'd slowly changed as Tyler's influence seeped into every aspect of her life. The sister who was now erasing our history for quick cash. Some wounds need cleaning before they can heal, I said finally. The calls I made that night set events in motion that would change everything. First to Nana's real attorney, Vernon Hargrove, who'd handled her affairs for decades until Rebecca convinced her to switch to Tyler's college roommate for the simple stuff. Vernon's shock was audible. Helen would never have approved selling that house, he said firmly. She was adamant it'd stay in the family for at least another generation. And you say Rebecca is using the old will? The one from before Tyler's investment opportunity fell through? Yes. From what I can tell, she never filed the updated version. Vernon's sigh was heavy with understanding, because the new one included provisions about Tyler being prohibited from managing any of the estate assets. Helen was quite explicit about her concerns. My emergency leave was approved 3 days later. As the transport plane lifted off, I clutched the envelope from Mrs. Abernathy like a shield. Inside was everything I needed: the real will, bank statements showing Tyler's withdrawals, and most damning of all, a journal detailing Nana's conversations with Rebecca about the missing money. "I know Tyler took it," one entry read, "and I know Rebecca is covering for him. She thinks I'm just a foolish old woman who misplaced her statements. But I've been balancing books since before she was born. Numbers don't lie, even when family does." The flight home was 18 hours of rehearsed confrontations and abandoned scripts. Would I go straight to the house? Call Rebecca first? Bring Vernon with me as backup? In the end, fate decided for me. As the taxi pulled up to Nana's Victorian on Cherry Street, a moving truck sat in the driveway. Men carried furniture I'd known all my life: the grandfather clock from the hallway, the china cabinet that had survived Sherman's march, the rocking chair where Nana had nursed my mother through scarlet fever. And there was Rebecca, clipboard in hand, checking items off a list as if she were inventory manager at a warehouse, not the granddaughter of Helen Mitchell. She saw me the moment I stepped from the taxi, her clipboard lowered slowly, her face cycling through surprise, guilt, and finally defiance. "You're supposed to be in Afghanistan," she said, as if my presence was the betrayal. "Kandahar, actually," I corrected, retrieving my duffel bag from the trunk. "And I'm supposed to be a lot of places, including here, apparently." We stared at each other across the front lawn where we'd once built snow angels in George's rare winter dustings. She looked both familiar and foreign. The same honey-brown hair we'd both inherited from our mother, but styled more expensively than Rebecca had ever managed before. New clothes, too. Designer labels, visible even from a distance. Amazing what liquidating a family estate could do for one's wardrobe. "You shouldn't have come," she said finally. "Everything's being handled according to Nana's wishes." I adjusted my grip on the duffel, feeling the envelope inside press against my side. "Is that why you're selling her silver? And her books? And the desk where she taught me to write thank-you notes every Christmas?" Rebecca's face tightened. "The estate has expenses. Tyler and I have put thousands into maintenance alone while you've been gone." "Interesting perspective," I said, keeping my voice level as I climbed the porch steps. The familiar creak of the third step triggered a wave of homesickness, so acute I nearly stumbled, especially since Nana's bank statements show she paid Edward's property management through December. Rebecca blinked, the first crack in her composure. "You have no right to her financial records." "I have every right." I stopped at the top of the stairs, looking down at my sister from the porch Nana had decorated with ferns and rocking chairs for as long as I could remember. Both were now gone. "I'm the executor of her estate." Rebecca's laugh was brittle. "No, you're not. I have the will right inside. I'm the executor. Judge Thornton confirmed it months ago." "You have a will," I corrected, "just not the most recent one." For the first time, uncertainty flickered across her face. Behind her, one of the movers approached with a question about the dining table. Rebecca waved him off without taking her eyes from mine. "There is no other will," she said, but her voice had lost its conviction. "Vernon Hargrove disagrees, but we can sort that out tomorrow at his office. For now," I gestured to the moving truck, "I think these gentlemen should take a break until we resolve the legal questions about whether you have the authority to sell any of this." Rebecca's face flushed. "You can't just walk in here after months away and start making demands. Where were you when Nana was dying? When the roof leaked? When property taxes came due. I was serving my country, I said quietly, which Nana understood and supported. And I was on video calls with her 3 times a week until the day she died. I may not have been here physically, but I never abandoned her. Rebecca stepped closer, lowering her voice. Let's not do this in front of strangers. Come inside. We can talk. I glanced at the moving truck, at the men waiting for direction. Tell them to stop loading. For a moment, I thought she might refuse. Then she turned and walked to the truck, speaking briefly to the foreman. He nodded, made a gesture to his crew, and they began setting down the items they were carrying. I followed Rebecca into the house, the screen door slapping behind us with the same musical thwack it had made throughout my childhood. But the familiar sound only highlighted how much else had changed. The hallway was half empty, nail holes marking where family photos had hung for decades. The air smelled wrong, not like Nana's lavender sachets and lemon polish, but like cardboard and packing tape. Rebecca led me to the kitchen, the one room that seemed relatively untouched. She flipped on the kettle, a new one I noticed, not Nana's dented copper pot, and reached for mugs without asking if I wanted tea. You could have called before coming, she said, her back to me. Like you called before emptying the house? I set my duffel on the kitchen table, a new glass-topped monstrosity that had replaced Nana's oak farmhouse table. Where is everything, Rebecca? The family photos, Nana's recipe books, Mom's paintings. Divided, sold, or stored, she answered mechanically, dropping tea bags into mugs, as specified in the will. Which will would that be? I unzipped my bag and removed the envelope. The one from 3 years ago that you showed, Judge Thornton? Or the one Nana signed 3 months before she died? The one that specifically states the house and contents are to remain intact until I return from deployment. Rebecca turned, her composure cracking further. What are you talking about? I removed the photocopied will and slid it across the table. This will, the one naming me executor, the one that mentions your husband's financial mistake with Nana's savings. Her face drained of color as she scanned the document. When she looked up, her eyes had hardened. This isn't real. It's a fake. The original is with Vernon Hargrove. Has been since Nana signed it. Then why didn't he present it to the court when I filed for probate? Because you went to Judge Thornton in his fishing cabin during the court's holiday recess and convinced him to approve an emergency petition due to my deployment. Because you never notified Vernon, who was on a cruise when you filed. Because you deliberately circumvented the proper legal process. Rebecca's hands trembled slightly as she set the kettle down without pouring the water. You don't understand the financial pressures. The house needs a new roof. Property taxes have gone up. Tyler's business, I interrupted, is exactly why Nana changed her will. After he borrowed $40,000 from her retirement account for an investment that mysteriously failed. That's not what happened. Rebecca's voice rose defensively. She offered to help when the market turned. It was a legitimate business opportunity that didn't work out. I pulled out the bank statements next. Is that why she documented each withdrawal? Why she noted Tyler, unauthorized, next to each one? Why she filed a fraud complaint with the bank that Tyler convinced her to drop for the sake of family harmony? Rebecca stared at the statements, her defenses visibly crumbling. When she finally spoke, her voice was small. We were going to pay her back. With what? The proceeds from selling her life piece by piece. She flinched as if I'd slapped her. You don't know what it's been like. Tyler lost his job last year. The medical bills from Nana's last months were enormous. The insurance barely covered half. So that justifies theft and fraud and selling off our family history while I'm deployed. Rebecca's eyes flashed. You got to leave. You got to escape this town, this life. Some of us stayed. Some of us dealt with the hard parts. The kettle had stopped boiling, the water cooling and used. We stood on opposite sides of an unfamiliar table in our grandmother's kitchen, separated by more than just furniture. "I didn't escape," I said finally. "I served. There's a difference." Rebecca looked away. "What happens now?" "Now I file the real will with the court. Now the sales stop, the house stays in the family as Nana wanted, and everything that hasn't been sold gets returned." "And then you leave again," she said bitterly. "Back to your real life, far away from here." "I have 8 months left in my enlistment," I corrected. "And then I'm coming home. For good. That was always the plan. Nana knew that." Rebecca's eyes widened slightly. "You're moving back here?" "This is home," I said simply. "It always has been." For the first time, something like shame crossed Rebecca's face. "Tyler won't like this. Frankly, I don't care what Tyler likes. He stole from our grandmother. He manipulated you into helping him strip away our family legacy. If I were you, I'd be less worried about what Tyler wants and more concerned about whether the next document I pull out of this envelope is a police report." The threat hung in the air between us. Rebecca sank slowly into a chair, the fight draining from her. "You wouldn't." "Depends on what happens next," I said, gathering the papers back into the envelope. "Meet me at Vernon's office tomorrow at 9. Bring the original you filed with the court and a complete inventory of what's been sold and what remains." I turned to leave, then hesitated. "One more thing. Where's Nana's bedroom key?" Rebecca frowned. "Her bedroom's unlocked. We've been packing it this week." "Not the master bedroom. Her real bedroom. The small one off the library that she moved to after Grandpa left. The one with the steel door that's always locked." Understanding dawned on Rebecca's face. "You know about that room?" "Of course I know. Nana showed me when I turned 18, just like she showed Mom. It's a Mitchell woman tradition." "She never showed me," Rebecca whispered, and for the first time, I saw real hurt beneath the defensiveness. "Did you ever ask? Or were you too busy letting Tyler convince you that this house was just an asset to liquidate?" Rebecca didn't answer, but her silence was response enough. "Where's the key, Rebecca?" She reached under her shirt and pulled out a chain with a small brass key. "I found it in her jewelry box. I haven't been able to open the door. The lock seems stuck." "It's not stuck," I said, holding out my hand. "It has a specific way of turning. Nana would have shown you if you'd asked." She hesitated, then pulled the chain over her head and placed the key in my palm. "What's in there?" "More documents to prove I'm the villain in your story." I closed my fingers around the key, feeling its familiar weight. "No, Rebecca. Something much more valuable than paper. Something that might help you remember who you were before Tyler. Before you started seeing family heirlooms as dollar signs." I left her in the kitchen and made my way through the half-empty house to the library. Most of the books were gone, the shelves bare except for a few outdated encyclopedias deemed worthless by the estate sale vultures. But the small wooden door in the corner remained, as solid and unassuming as ever. The key turned with the specific pattern Nana had taught me. In quarter turn right, slight pressure upward, then full turn left. The lock clicked open with a satisfying snick. Inside was a small bedroom, untouched by Rebecca's purge. The single bed with its handmade quilt. The dressing table with Nana's hairbrush still containing a few silver strands. And most importantly, the painting above the bed, the one our mother had created the summer before her death. It showed the Mitchell women across 4 generations, sitting on the front porch of this very house. Great-grandmother Eliza with her suffragette sash, grandmother Helen with her accounting ledgers, our mother Catherine with her painter's smock, and Rebecca and me as children, holding hands on the porch steps, our faces turned toward the future. Beneath the painting was a cedar chest. I knelt and opened it, relieved to find everything still in place. The family Bible with births and deaths recorded back to 1842, the collection of letters from 5 generations of Mitchell women, the small leather pouch of antique coins that had helped Eliza buy the house when no bank would lend to a woman. And there, tucked in the side compartment, was the original of Nana's final will. Not a copy. The original, with her signature in blue ink and the official notary stamp. I held it to my chest and allowed myself one moment of pure relief. Tomorrow would bring confrontation and legal battles. There would be harsh words and probably tears. The road to reclaiming my inheritance, our family's legacy, would not be smooth. But for tonight, in this sacred space that Rebecca hadn't managed to violate, I could breathe. Nana had prepared, just as she'd taught me to do. She'd known what might happen and had laid the groundwork for me to fix it. I touched the painting gently, my fingers tracing the image of Rebecca and me as children, still innocent, still connected by something stronger than greed or resentment. "I'll make this right," I whispered to the empty room, to the echoes of the Mitchell women who had faced their own battles in this house. For all of us, even, perhaps especially, for the sister who had forgotten what truly mattered. I slept in Nana's hidden bedroom that night, the original tucked safely beneath my pillow. The twin bed was too small for comfort, but it felt right somehow, like Nana was keeping watch. In the morning, I woke to the sound of voices downstairs. Rebecca wasn't alone. She can't just waltz in and stop everything, a man's voice insisted. "Tyler." My brother-in-law's tone was the same as I remembered, entitled and slick, like oil on water. "We have a signed court order, Rebecca. She has nothing." "She has another will, Tyler, and bank statements. She knows about the money." "So what?" "It's her word against ours. Judge Thornton is a golf buddy. He'll back us up." I dressed quickly in my civilian clothes, tucking the will and most crucial documents into an inside pocket of my jacket. Then I snapped a few photos of the room with my phone. Evidence that this space existed exactly as Nana had left it. After a moment's hesitation, I also took the family Bible and the painting, wrapping them in the quilt from the bed. Some things were too precious to risk. As I descended the stairs, their conversation stopped abruptly. Tyler stood in the hallway, Rebecca beside him looking pale and unrest. He hadn't changed much in the 3 years since I'd seen him last. Still handsome in that practiced way of salesmen and politicians, his smile never quite reaching his eyes. "Well, look who's back from playing soldier," he said, that smile appearing on cue. "Rebecca told me you had quite the dramatic entrance yesterday." I ignored him, focusing on my sister. "The movers aren't coming back today, are they?" Before she could answer, Tyler stepped forward. "Of course they are. We have a schedule to keep. The house goes on the market Monday." "Not anymore, it doesn't." I kept my voice calm, the way I would speak to an agitated civilian at a checkpoint. "The sale is on hold pending legal review of the actual will." Tyler's smile tightened. "Rebecca showed me your evidence." "Photocopies won't hold up in court, Olivia. You should know that." "Good thing I have the original, then." I patted my jacket where the document rested against my heart, along with Nana's journal detailing every unauthorized withdrawal you made from her accounts. His eyes narrowed fractionally, the first crack in his polished veneer. "Helen gave me that money as an investment. She understood business risk." "Is that why she filed a fraud complaint with the bank?" "Because she was such an enthusiastic investor." Tyler's jaw twitched. "A misunderstanding. She withdrew it." "After you convinced her that family harmony was more important than $40,000. Rebecca stepped between us, her eyes pleading. "Please, both of you. This isn't helping. We're meeting Vernon at 9, and we'll sort everything out legally." "There's nothing to sort out," Tyler snapped. "We have a valid will and court order. This house is being sold." The front door opened before I could respond. A slender man in his 70s entered without knocking, his bow tie slightly crooked beneath a face creased with concern. I hope I'm not interrupting, Vernon Hargrove said, though his tone made it clear he didn't care if he was. When Olivia called last night, I thought it best to come directly here rather than wait for our meeting. Mr. Hargrove, Rebecca managed, clearly thrown by his arrival. We weren't expecting you yet. Evidently not. His eyes took in the half-empty hallway, the stacked boxes, the tension hanging like smoke. I see things are exactly as Olivia described. A shame. Tyler stepped forward, hand extended. Tyler Mackenzie. I don't believe we've formally met. Vernon looked at the offered hand, but didn't take it. We haven't, though I'm quite familiar with your financial history, Mr. Mackenzie. Helen was most thorough in her documentation. Tyler's hand dropped to his side, his smile now completely gone. Whatever Helen told you was colored by misunderstanding. She was confused in her final months. Helen Mitchell, Vernon said icily, balanced the city's municipal budget for 27 years without a single error. She was never confused about numbers. He turned to me, his expression softening. Olivia, I've already filed an emergency injunction this morning to halt any further sale of assets from the estate. Judge Martinez signed it at 7:30. He handed me a document bearing an official seal. Sheriff Daniels should be here shortly to formally serve it. Tyler snatched the paper from my hands. This is ridiculous. Thornton already ruled. Judge Thornton, Vernon interrupted, acted improperly by processing an emergency probate petition without proper notice to all parties and during a court recess. Judge Martinez was quite interested in that procedural irregularity. The sound of tires on gravel announced another arrival. Through the front window, I saw a county sheriff's vehicle parking behind Vernon's sedan. Right on time, Vernon murmured. Tyler's face flushed with anger. You had no right, he hissed at me. No right to come back and destroy what Rebecca and I have worked for. Worked for? I couldn't help the harsh laugh that escaped. Is that what you call selling off my family's history? Work. Vernon placed a calming hand on my arm as Sheriff Daniels knocked at the door. Rebecca moved to answer it, her movements mechanical, her face blank with shock. The next hour passed in a blur of legal documents and official statements. The sheriff served Tyler and Rebecca with the injunction, formally halting all sales and removal of property. Vernon presented the original will, which I retrieved from my jacket, explaining to the sheriff how the previous version had been superseded. Through it all, Rebecca remained silent, her eyes moving between Tyler and me, as if watching a tennis match where both players were using grenades instead of balls. Tyler, on the other hand, cycled through a predictable pattern of denial, anger, and finally, desperate negotiation. Look, he said after the sheriff had departed, leaving us with strict instructions that nothing further was to be removed from the property. We can work something out between family. There's no need for courts and injunctions. There wasn't, I agreed, until you decided to liquidate Nana's estate against her explicit wishes. We needed the money, he insisted. Rebecca and I have bills, debts. The market hasn't been kind to my investments. You're gambling, you mean, Vernon corrected, shuffling through a stack of papers he'd brought. Helen documented your casino visits quite meticulously. 13 trips to Atlantic City in the year before she changed her will. Always after she'd made a withdrawal from her accounts for your investments. Rebecca's head snapped up. Casino visits? Tyler, you told me those were business conferences. Tyler's facade finally cracked completely. They were business, networking, client meetings. At blackjack tables? Vernon raised a skeptical eyebrow. Helen had photographed Rebecca. She hired a private investigator after the third unauthorized withdrawal from her accounts. My sister's face crumpled. For the first time, I saw the full weight of realization hit her, not just about the will or the house, but about the man she'd chosen to believe over her own family. Is it true? She whispered to Tyler. Did you take Nana's retirement money to gamble? His silence was answer enough. Perhaps, Vernon suggested gently, Mr. Mackenzie should step outside while we discuss the family matters at hand. I'm family, Tyler protested, but his voice lacked conviction. You're the reason we're in this mess, I said. And right now, the only thing keeping me from calling Sheriff Daniels back to discuss criminal charges is the fact that you're married to my sister. Tyler looked to Rebecca for support, but she had turned away, her shoulders shaking slightly. Fine, he snapped. Have your little family meeting. It doesn't change anything. That money is gone, and you can't prove I took it illegally. The front door slammed behind him with enough force to rattle the remaining pictures on the walls. In the ringing silence that followed, Rebecca's quiet sobs became the only sound. Vernon cleared his throat. I should give you two a moment. He gathered his papers and moved toward the library. I'll just review these in the other room. When we were alone, I did something I hadn't planned. I sat beside Rebecca and placed my hand over hers. She flinched, but didn't pull away. How long have you known? She asked finally, her voice ragged. About the gambling. Nana told me last year, after she hired the investigator. She never told me. She tried Becca. She said you wouldn't listen. My sister wiped her eyes with the heel of her hand, a gesture so familiar from our childhood that it made my throat tighten. I thought she was just being controlling, that she didn't trust Tyler's business sense. I never imagined he would lie to you. I finished when she couldn't. Use Nana's money to feed his addiction? Use you to get access to the estate when she tried to cut him off. Rebecca's face crumpled further. I've been so stupid. You've been manipulated by someone you trusted. I corrected. There's a difference. Is there? Because from where I'm sitting, it feels pretty stupid to have sold our family history for a man who was gambling it away behind my back. I couldn't argue with that. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of all that had been lost, not just objects, but trust, connection, time, settling around us like dust. What happens now? Rebecca asked finally. Now we try to undo as much damage as possible. I squeezed her hand once before letting go. The estate sale purchases made after Judge Thornton's improper ruling can be legally voided. Vernon is already preparing the paperwork. We'll need to contact everyone who bought something and arrange returns. And if they don't want to return them, then we have options from civil suits to simply buying items back. Nana left enough liquid assets to handle it if necessary. Rebecca winced. There's not much left of those assets. Tyler and we used most of the cash to pay off his credit cards. Of course they had. I took a deep breath, reminding myself that anger wouldn't help now. We'll figure it out. Vernon has a complete accounting of the estate from before you filed the outdated will. We'll compare it to what remains and go from there. And what about? She gestured vaguely between us. This, us. That was the harder question, the one I'd been avoiding since arriving. What about us? What happened to sisters who had once been inseparable but were now divided by choices, distance, and betrayal? I don't know, I admitted. That depends on what happens next. What does that mean? It means I need to see real change, Rebecca. Not just words. Not just regret because you got caught. She flinched again but nodded. I understand. Vernon's return saved us from further uncomfortable revelations. He carried a legal pad covered in neat notes. I've outlined our immediate steps, he announced, all business. First, we file Helen's actual will with the court today. Judge Martinez has already agreed to expedite the review given the circumstances. Second, we void all sales made after the improper probate ruling. Third, we conduct a complete inventory to determine what's missing. He looked up from his notes. And finally, we need to discuss the matter of the missing funds. Helen was explicit in her wishes that if Tyler's indiscretions came to light, She wanted restitution. Rebecca paled. We can't repay $40,000. We don't have it. I'm aware, Vernon said, his tone gentler, which is why Helen included a provision in her will regarding your inheritance. Rebecca. My sister stiffened. What provision? Vernon glanced at me. I nodded for him to continue. Your share of the estate is held in trust until the missing funds are accounted for. You can either repay the amount directly, or it will be deducted from your portion. So I get nothing until then? Rebecca's voice rose in panic. How am I supposed to live? How do I pay my bills? You get a monthly stipend from the trust, I explained. Enough to cover reasonable expenses, but the lump sum only comes when the debt is settled. And I suppose you control this trust? There was a flash of the old bitterness in her tone. No, I said. Vernon does as co-executor. I have no access to your funds. She seemed surprised by this. So you're not punishing me? This isn't about punishment, Rebecca. It's about honoring Nana's wishes and protecting what's left of her legacy. And honestly, it's about protecting you from Tyler. I don't need protection from my husband. Vernon and I exchanged glances. The bank records suggest otherwise, he said gently. Helen was concerned that any direct inheritance would ultimately feed Mr. Mackenzie's gambling habit rather than securing your future. Before Rebecca could respond, the sound of raised voices came from outside. Tyler was arguing with someone in the driveway. I moved to the window and saw Mrs. Abernathy standing her ground against my brother-in-law's looming figure. Excuse me, I said, already heading for the door. No one yelled at the woman who had been Nana's loyal friend for 3 decades. Not on my watch. I stepped onto the porch in time to hear Tyler's angry accusations. You interfering old busybody. None of this would be happening if you'd minded your own business. Mrs. Abernathy, at least a foot shorter than Tyler and wearing a cardigan with embroidered cats, showed no sign of intimidation. Helen Mitchell was my business, young man. 30 years of friendship makes it my business when her granddaughter starts selling off her life while the other one is serving our country. Tyler noticed me and turned, his anger finding a new target. You. This is all your fault. We had everything handled until you came back. You mean until I interrupted your theft, I corrected calmly. Step away from Mrs. Abernathy, Tyler. Or what? You'll call your military friends? Wave around more paperwork. That money is gone, Olivia. Your precious grandmother's retirement fund paid off my poker debts months ago. There's nothing you can do about it. I heard the screen door open behind me as Rebecca and Vernon joined us on the porch. Tyler's admission hung in the air between us all. Poker debts, Rebecca repeated, her voice hollow. So it's true. All of it. Tyler seemed to realize his mistake too late. He backpedaled quickly. Becca, that's not. I didn't mean. Don't, she said, raising a hand to stop him. Just don't. I heard you. We all heard you. For the first time, I saw real fear in Tyler's eyes, not of legal consequences, but of losing his meal ticket. Without Rebecca, without access to what remained of the estate, he had nothing. Baby, you know how these things get exaggerated. I had a few games with clients. Business expenses. Your grandmother didn't understand. She understood exactly what you were doing, Rebecca interrupted, and I was too blind to see it. Mrs. Abernathy moved to stand beside me, her presence steady as a lighthouse. Helen always said the truth would come out eventually, said her Mitchell women were smart enough to see through any man's lies given enough time. Mitchell women, Rebecca echoed softly. She looked at me, then at the house behind us, our grandmother's legacy, the home of 4 generations of women who had survived wars, economic downturns, abandonment, and loss. Something shifted in her expression, a hardening, a clarity I hadn't seen since before she met Tyler. I want you to leave, she said to him. Tyler blinked in confusion. What? I want you to leave. Now, take your car and go. Becca, you're upset. We should talk about this privately. There's nothing to talk about. Her voice strengthened with each word. You stole from my grandmother. You lied to me. You convinced me to sell off my family's history to cover your gambling debts. And now you've admitted it in front of witnesses. Tyler's salesman's smile returned, desperate and oily. Honey, that's not how it happened. Let me explain. Vernon, Rebecca interrupted, turning to the attorney. Can you add something to those papers you're preparing? I want a separation agreement. Immediately. Vernon, to his credit, didn't miss a beat. Of course. I'll have it ready by this afternoon. Tyler's facade cracked completely. You can't do this. That's my house, too. My inheritance. Actually, Vernon interjected, it isn't. The house was explicitly left to Olivia with a lifetime residency right for Rebecca. And as of this morning's injunction, you have no legal claim to any assets of Helen Mitchell's estate. Tyler looked from face to face, searching for an ally and finding none. Even the movers who had arrived during our confrontation stood awkwardly by their truck, clearly reluctant to get involved. This isn't over, he finally snarled, backing toward his car. You think you've won, but I'll fight this. All of it. With what money? Mrs. Abernathy asked mildly. Seems to me you've gambled away your war chest already. He had no answer for that. With a final glare, Tyler got into his car, a new BMW that had probably been purchased with Nana's money, and drove away, gravel spraying from beneath his tires. In the silence that followed, Rebecca seemed to deflate, as if Tyler had been the only thing keeping her upright. I moved to her side instinctively, supporting her arm as she swayed. I've made such a mess of everything, she whispered. Not everything, I said, and not beyond repair. Vernon cleared his throat. Perhaps we should continue this discussion inside. There's still much to do. The next week passed in a blur of legal filings, inventory checks, and uncomfortable discoveries. The toll of Tyler and Rebecca's mismanagement was even worse than I'd feared. Beyond the missing $40,000, they'd run up debts against the estate, sold irreplaceable heirlooms for a fraction of their value, and nearly depleted Nana's carefully managed accounts. But amid the wreckage, there were small victories. The couple from Savannah who had purchased Nana's roll-top desk returned it voluntarily when Vernon explained the situation, refusing even reimbursement. We have desks, the wife said simply. You have memories. Mrs. Abernathy organized a group of Nana's friends to help track down items sold at the estate sale. Through church networks and local gossip channels, they located nearly 60% of what had been sold, and most buyers were willing to return items when they learned the circumstances. And most surprisingly, Rebecca threw herself into the recovery efforts with a determination I hadn't seen since we were teenagers. She worked from dawn until night, making calls, organizing records, confronting Tyler's deceptions with clear-eyed resolve. I need to make this right, she said when I suggested she rest. For Nana, for you, for myself. On my 5th day home, as we sorted through recovered items in the library, Rebecca paused with a silver frame in her hands. It held a photo of us as children, sitting on the porch steps at Christmas, matching red dresses and gap-toothed smiles. Do you remember this day? She asked. I nodded. The year Nana gave us both journals. Said Mitchell women needed to record their thoughts because the world didn't always listen. I never wrote in mine, Rebecca admitted. I thought it was silly. I still have mine. Brought it through 3 deployments. She set the photo carefully on the shelf. I keep thinking about what you said when you first got here, about how I'd forgotten who I was before Tyler. You were right. She looked up, her eyes clearer than I'd seen them in years. I forgot a lot of things, including how to be a sister. The words hung between us, an offering and a question. We both forgot things, I said finally. I was so focused on service, on proving myself, that I missed the signs of what was happening here. I should have paid more attention. That's not your job. I'm the big sister. I'm supposed to look out for you, not steal your inheritance while you're deployed. The blunt assessment startled a laugh from me. Well, when you put it that way. Rebecca smiled, a genuine one that reminded me of the girl who had taught me to ride a bike and French braid my hair. I'm going to make this right, Liv. I promise. Not just the things, the house and the heirlooms, but us, if you'll let me try. I considered the impossible chasm that had grown between us, the betrayal, the loss, the years of growing apart. Could it be bridged? Did I want it to be? The answer came more easily than I expected. Nana used to say Mitchell women don't know how to give up, I said. Not on their homes, not on their dreams, and especially not on each other. The tears that filled Rebecca's eyes were mirrored in my own. When she reached across the space between us, I took her hand without hesitation. There would be more difficult days ahead. Tyler had already contested the will, though Vernon assured us the case had no merit. The process of recovering sold items would be long and not always successful. Rebecca's journey to financial independence and emotional healing was just beginning. But in that moment, sitting among the remnants and beginnings of our shared legacy, I felt Nana's presence as clearly as if she were arranging books on the shelf beside us. Always have a backup plan, she told me. But perhaps she'd had another lesson I was only now understanding. Always leave room for redemption. 3 months later, on a crisp autumn morning, Rebecca and I sat on the front porch swing, coffee mugs steaming in the cool air. The house around us was slowly returning to its former state, not identical, but faithful to its spirit. Some treasures had been permanently lost, but others had been rediscovered, including relationships with neighbors and community that had withered during Tyler's influence. Rebecca had found work at the local library, ironically cataloging and preserving historical documents. The divorce proceedings were underway, complicated by Tyler's attempts to claim estate assets, but proceeding steadily under Vernon's guidance. Mrs. Abernathy said the Historical Society wants to include Nana in their exhibit on women business pioneers, Rebecca said, watching a pair of cardinals at the feeder we'd restored to the yard. They'd like to display her accounting ledgers and some photos. She'd love that, I said, being remembered for her work, not just as someone's wife or mother. Like a true Mitchell woman. Rebecca sipped her coffee. I've been thinking about what happens when your enlistment ends next spring. I raised an eyebrow, and I think we should renovate the East Wing. The one Nana always talked about turning into an apartment but never got around to. You could have your own space while still being here, if you want. The offer caught me by surprise. You'd want me to live here? With you? Rebecca nodded. This house was meant for Mitchell women. Plural. It's too big for just one of us, and I've had enough of rattling around it alone. I thought about it, returning not just to the house, but to a version of the sisterhood we'd once taken for granted. Imperfect, complicated, but real. We'd drive each other crazy within a week, I pointed out. Probably. She smiled. But at least it would be honest crazy. Not the fake harmony I had with Tyler while he dismantled our lives behind my back. Put that way, honest crazy sounded pretty good. I'll think about it, I promised. But first, I need to finish what I started. Rebecca nodded, understanding that I meant more than just my military service. I meant the promise I'd made to Nana and to myself. To serve with honor, to return home intact in all the ways that mattered, to preserve what had been entrusted to me. As if reading my thoughts, she reached into her pocket and pulled out a small brass key. I had this copied for you, for Nana's room. I haven't gone in there since he showed it to me, but I thought maybe we could go through it together sometime. Learn about the Mitchell women who came before us. I took the key, feeling its weight. The weight of inheritance, of legacy, of responsibility. I'd like that, I said. Above us, the porch ceiling Nana had painted haint blue to keep away unhappy spirits glowed in the morning light. The sound of Mrs. Abernathy calling a greeting from next door floated across the yard. The neighborhood was waking up, going about its business, continuing its story, and we were part of it again. 2 Mitchell women reclaiming their inheritance. Not just the physical house and its contents, but the deeper legacy of resilience, forgiveness, and belonging that no one could sell off or steal away. Not even someone who should have known better.